Hey guys, welcome back to the show. I've got lots of things I'm doing today in the shop. Among other things, I'm going to be pulling the sides out of my side bending machines. So I actually moved my whole side bending machine setup to a whole different area of the shop that I'm expanding into. So you'll get to see a little bit of that. And basically I'm just going to be pulling them out of the side bending molds and putting them into the internal molds, the interior molds, which I use for assembly. So there's a couple cool things we can talk about there and get into. But before we start, let's do some of your questions. So the first question I have here comes from Timmy Tex Longhorns, and he says, is it better to use quadruple A Engelmann or single A Sitka spruce for a guitar top? So spruces are graded basically from A to quadruple A. Okay, there's seconds and thirds even, but that's kind of really bad stuff, you know, with knots in them and everything like that. But generally, the good stuff is graded from A to quadruple A. And so different people are going to vary in their opinions on this, different luthiers. And my opinion is always that to go grading over species within the realm of the acceptable species that are used for guitar tops. Meaning, I'm not going to go outside of, you know, softwoods and some hardwoods like mahogany for a guitar top. I'm not going to, you know, use cherry or something like that because I can get an excellent grading on it. But if I'm trying to decide between, say, Sitka spruce and Adirondack spruce, which is highly desirable, Adirondack spruce is, then if I can get a better grading, say quadruple A for the Sitka, I'll go with the Sitka all day over a single A Adirondack. Okay? Engelmann, I think he's implying in the question, and he's not wrong, that Engelmann is a little less desirable than Sitka, but honestly, quadruple A Engelmann, I will take that over single A Sitka any day. Again, for me personally, and some people might differ, I go grading over species, especially when it's that big of a gap from A to quadruple A. So when you go up in the grading, typically what you see is you get more grain lines per inch across that soundboard, which that's very desirable for just general stiffness and even distribution of stiffness across the plate. So I like seeing many grain lines. Again, regardless of the species, if I can get more of those grain lines, that makes me happier. And if I can get those grain lines to be straight and quarter sawn, which again, those are also hallmarks of a quadruple A set, straight and quarter sawn, not run out or coming in at an angle, then all the better. So I'll take that over, you know, a top that just has a name with better brand recognition, is basically what you can call it. Like, telling someone that you have an an Adirondack top, just has a certain clout to it. But the reality is more nuanced than that, right? We do care about the quality. Okay, so I think that answers that pretty good. Moving on here, Raul Maldonado writes, hello Eric, I have doubts if the carbon fiber dust does not cause itching in your arms and legs. I just used it to remember, I think he's using the wrong word there, to remember a neck, and it stung my arms and legs. Okay, so basically what he's saying is carbon fiber dust, and actually it's not going to be the dust, so I'm going to make a little comment there. It's going to be the fibers themselves. They can cause itchiness in your arms or your fingers or wherever you get those little fibers, because that's what it is, stuck in your arm. And they're actually really obnoxious. So you really want to avoid playing around with any cut ends of a carbon fiber rod. So think of it this way: a carbon fiber rod is like a bundle of fibers. So at the very end of that rod, where the, let's just call it the end grain of the fibers are exposed, that's where, if you're kind of mucking around up there, you're gonna get little tiny brittle fibers stuck in your finger, and it's gonna be itchy as hell. So two things: one, you could just wear gloves. Lots of people do that. If for whatever reason you're not going to wear gloves, at the very least, just handle it very delicately, especially where the ends are and where if you cut it, right, that exposed end grain there is going to be the worst part of it, right? So as long as you're not playing around with that section or like wiping your hand across it, that's another way to get splinters in your hands. So it definitely does cause itching. Okay, it's not the dust necessarily, but the dust is very bad for your health as well. Well, actually, I would imagine the dust itself, if you have a pile of dust that you've created from working the material, it's still little tiny fibers. So I would imagine that also would make you very itchy. So I retract my statement. It's all bad. Just be careful with carbon fiber. Again, wear gloves, and when you're working it, mask yourself. Okay. Chris DeMeglio writes, good video, lots of work. Evapo-Rust is an excellent product and is safe to use. Okay, Chris, I haven't heard of Evapo-Rust. That sounds good to me. I might check that out. So that was on a video I did about restoring an old jointer and leveling the table and doing all that stuff. There was a lot of rust on it that I was removing. So yeah, if you guys want to check that out too, I've never used it, but it's called Evapo-Rust for removing rust on your equipment. Okay, Rui Souza writes, hi Eric, I really like this new format where you answer questions and demonstrate some building techniques as well. Keep them coming. Greetings from France. Okay, cool. Thank you. It's good to get feedback like that. I really appreciate that. Thanks, man. All right. Yohef988 writes, is it safe to over radius the Evo fret wire a little tighter, meaning will it still go in without springing out and turning the fret job into hell? And he's asking this question in respects to Evo Gold fret wire, because that's what I was using in the video. But the answer I'm going to give really applies to all fret wire, and that's that generally speaking, you can't go wrong with over radiusing, and in fact, you always want the fret wire to be a little bit over radiused. And I say generally because what I mean is within reason. At least in my experience, I've never over radiused fret wire to the point where when I hammered it in, it caused a problem. Technically, it certainly could cause a problem if you over radiused it in a way that was just beyond common sense, right? So to answer your question, generally speaking, no. I wouldn't worry about over radiusing. It hasn't been a problem in my experience, though it could be if you really overdo it. Okay? And oh, that's it. Okay, that's all I want to do today. Thank you guys. Let's go ahead and check out the bending machines. They're all the way back there in the dark bowels of the ship here. I have terrible lighting over there still. I know I always explain that to you guys before I take you over there, but I'm working on it. So for you guys who don't know, my wife and I and my daughter used to live here at the shop, not here in this room, obviously, with the bandsaws, but in a different part of the shop. And recently we moved out, so now I have about a 30-minute commute back to here every day to go to work. But what that means also is that the part of the shop that we were living out of is now all mine. So I can expand my operations further out into the building. And I'm super excited about that. But I haven't really gotten started on it yet, except for moving a couple of things. So I'm kind of feeling out what I want to do with the space. But let's get over there and let's go check it out. Okay, so like I said, it's a little darker over here, but I'm going to fix that. Hey, look, there's guitar number 85, in case you guys have been waiting for sort of the unveiling of that. It's actually done, it's right there. It's just been sitting after the finish has applied. And honestly, the finish is fully cured. It's ready to be buffed right now, but as is often the case, I get pulled in many directions here, and often, especially at the end stage of a guitar, it'll sit around for a while before I actually buff it and string it up and, you know, throw it on the website and all of that. But that will be coming soon when I have the time. This is what we're here for today. So what we have here, I always call this my side bending carousel. Just simply because I've assembled 4 side bending machines in a circle here, so it's just kind of fun to call it the carousel, because I literally go from this bender to that one to the last one. I go around in a circle, bending the sides, each slat one at a time. And this works out great for me, for my flow here, because I have the electricity here in the middle to plug into. This is my controller, which is extremely important for managing the heat of the blankets. You don't want to just run them without a controller, because they will just continue to feed energy into that blanket. Way too much heat will go into it, and you can even destroy the blanket, not let alone your beautiful side. And then also this circle configuration here works out good because I use these little clamps on all of them, and as I'm pulling the clamps off, I can just kind of toss them into the middle of the table, and they're always easily accessible when I get to the next machine. So I've found this carousel configuration to actually work out really well. This, of course, is something that is not going to be for everyone. This is for those of you that might be very, very serious and have lots of space and lots of time and money, to be honest, to invest in what you're doing with guitar making. A lot of you guys are doing this out of smaller shops than this, and more so as a hobby. So you're probably just going to have one side bending machine, and you just won't be able to batch out your side bending quite as quickly. And for a lot of you, that's just fine. It's not going to be a big deal. But I always like to show my little setup here for those of you who do want to take it to the next level. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start removing these one at a time, and I will talk more about it as I go. Okay, so these have these rollers here on springs that connect to a screw at the end here. And before I take these off, I have these little springs here that I latch onto the side bending slats. Those are the 2 pieces of metal that make up the outside of our side bending sandwich. And actually, I should start there a little bit. Why don't I just explain what that is for a moment? So The side bending sandwich is, nope, I thought I had a slat there as an example, but I don't. The side bending sandwich is, you have a piece of spring steel, a metal slat of spring steel on the outside. That's like your top piece of bread on your sandwich. And then on the inside you have a thermal blanket. That's like, I don't know, your salami, whatever you're into, bologna on your sandwich. And then below that you have your actual side. And then under that, of course, you have your other slice of bread, which is the other piece of spring steel. Okay? So those two slices of bread, the pieces of spring steel, are what hold the thermal blanket tightly against the side. It just keeps everything locked in, and it helps to hold the moisture in as well as you're essentially cooking that side. So you need those four things: your two slats of spring steel, your thermal blanket, and of course the wood itself that you're bending. Alright, let's go ahead and take this out. So what I was starting to say is, before I pull this roller up all the way, I have this spring here that I latch onto the bottom piece of spring steel, because if I don't do that to hold it down, it will want to spring up as I'm removing this, and put pressure, outward pressure on the sides. Okay, got my spring on there. Now I can take this roller off. Same thing on the other side. First I gotta put my spring on. Okay, both of the rollers are off. Bring this up. See, there's the spring steel I was talking about, thermal blanket. Okay, take the side bending shoe out. That's what puts pressure down on the waist. Alright, and here we have the side itself. It's wrapped in two things, aluminum foil, and on the inside here, as I pull the aluminum foil off, you will see parchment paper. So the parchment paper actually helps to soak up the moisture. So when I spritz this is rosewood. Rosewood does not have to be soaked for 15 minutes in hot water. It just needs to be spritzed with water. Other woods like mahogany, you do actually have to soak it. When I do that, I then apply the parchment paper to it, which helps to prevent scorching and to soak up some of that moisture. And then I wrap it in aluminum foil, which also protects it from the heating blanket. If you don't use the aluminum foil, you will be able to tell the difference, because you'll have sort of this spider web scorching pattern all over the wood, and that is from the heating blanket, from contact with the heating blanket itself. Alright, let's put this aside and pull out another one. You know, many people have asked, do I have plans for these vending machines? Like a set of plans for building them that I've either made or that I use or recommend. And I never have, well, I do have an answer for that, and it's that no, I don't. Unfortunately, I wish I did. I actually built all these because I was a, hold on, I have to sneeze. That's the worst when that happens. Okay, the sneeze went away, I think. Yeah, I don't have plans for these that I can offer you guys, simply because I was originally donated my first side bending machine from a luthier who passed away, and I have built all these other side bending machines by simply, I disassembled my first side bending machine and just traced out all the individual parts and basically copied that side bending machine. I guess I could make plans based on that, but honestly I'm not going to do that. I'm not good at doing that sort of thing. You know, using AutoCAD and all that stuff. I don't even know how to do that. So yeah, sorry. You can buy side bending machines though. LMI sells them. I'm sure other companies do too. I'm not sure if StewMac has a side bending machine. I don't think I've ever seen it. So all of these side benders, because I have a permanent setup here with this table, they're actually all fixed, screwed down to the table, which makes this job easier because they don't move. Alright, once again, aluminum foil on the outside and parchment paper underneath that. And then we have a beautiful rosewood side. Alright, so we got our two sides. Let's go back to the main part of the shop. Okay, and now what we're doing is I'm just loading these up in the interior mold so that I can mark the overhang and cut the two pieces to size so they fit lengthwise. I always start with the waist spreader, not that it matters too much. So I want to point this out. You guys see how these are all in separate pieces here? This is something that I started doing simply because I can keep my spreaders in place not only when I'm gluing the back to the sides, but also when I'm closing the box, gluing the top to the sides. And then, so when I'm doing that, I can just leave these spreaders in and then just extricate them through the sound hole after the fact by breaking them apart into smaller pieces. And that way, the sides can better be held rigid and flat and square to the top and the back plate. Basically, they can better be held pressed against their mold during assembly if I can leave the spreaders in, because I know that I can pull them out after the fact. That's why these are in pieces. I used to glue these together to make the spreader one piece, but I forget where, I picked this up from someone else, and I wish I could give them credit right now at the moment. It was someone online, actually, so I didn't actually speak to them directly, but basically I stole their idea, and now I can't remember enough to give them credit. So sorry about that, whoever you are. looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and mark it. So all of that was just to be able to mark exactly where this meets the center seam here, which is always just slightly different from how I bent it, because I already have lines that I marked from before I bent this, and I could just cut on those lines, but through the bending process there's just a little bit of sometimes the pieces come out where the waist bend is just slightly to one side or the other, and so for the sake of accuracy, I like to actually load this up and mark it rather than just cut them on the lines that I made before the bend. I hope that makes sense to you guys. Pull these out now. That one's ready to be cut. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Real simple. I'm just going to take a backing board here, just a piece of scrap wood to cut onto, and place it on that board, and then another piece of scrap, preferably with a nice straight edge on it, I'm going to use as a fence. And I'm going to place it right on my line, actually a little bit off of the line to account for the kerf of the saw. And so I put it a little bit off of the line to account for the kerf of the saw, but also a little bit extra, just because having a little bit of extra space between the two pieces isn't actually a bad thing. And it'll just make it easier to fit the two side slats in there if they're not perfectly right up against each other. Alright, so clamp that on there. I like to use this nice carcass saw right here and just place that against the fence. There it is. You could also just do this on the bandsaw. Just follow your line, make that cut. Either way, I prefer to do it this way though. Alright, let's get the back side, same thing. If this is moving around a whole bunch, like that, see how it moved? If it's doing that, then you can always throw another clamp on there. However, it shouldn't be waffling back and forth if you're using the saw correctly and if your saw is sharp, because you shouldn't have to put so much pressure into it that this actually waffles around. So that's one thing to consider. Whenever you're cutting, it really is just a good technique involves light pressure. You shouldn't be digging into the wood. one set trimmed. Alright, now the two pieces can be placed in the mold. And before I even put the spreaders in, I'll just get the two pieces in kind of like this. This rosewood is way more flexible than you might think, meaning don't be too afraid to pull it up, to force it into place here. It's not going to crack, I mean, unless you're doing something wrong. There's always a chance it could, but it's very flexible. And now the spreaders go back in. I want to fix this spreader. This one's giving me a little bit of trouble. Sometimes when the two threaded sides are uneven, it just doesn't work the same. So these side sets right here in particular that I'm working on are being prepared for the hands-on workshops that will be starting soon at the end of March here. The first class for spring starts, and there's two more in April and one in May. All of those are filled right now. There are definitely spots in the fall classes, though, if you want to check that out. We will be building rosewood back and sides, which is what you see here, and Sitka spruce for the tops. Okay. Alright. So now this I'm going to take over to the shelf where I store all the parts for upcoming builds. And I'm going to show you that. Okay, so I always prepare my parts. There's a certain extent that I take these parts to before the main part of the build begins. And specifically with the classes, these are things I do to prepare for the classes. I bend the sides and I join the back and side sets. And that's just to make it fit within the 9-day time constraint that we have for the class. So here, let me give you a look at all this. This is basically what the parts look like when they're all prepared. This guitar is ready for the class. These other ones I still have to prep out a little bit. This one's pretty much ready to go. And some students have special preferences as far as wood, and I accommodate those as well. So we got East Indian rosewood, Dalbergia latifolia, and Nicaraguan rosewood as well, Gaboon ebony, and Macassar ebony. Like I said, Sitka spruce for the tops. In some cases, it is German spruce for the tops. So, Honduran mahogany for the necks. That's Switina macrophylla. And Honduran mahogany is basically the king of stability, so it's an easy, obvious choice for neck woods. By far, most guitar makers who are building quality use Honduran mahogany. Anyway, I can tell I'm running out of things to say here, so I'm just kind of rambling and mentioning names of wood. So I think we're done here. So I'm going to sign off. I will talk to you guys later. Have a great day, and see you guys in the next one. Bye.
If you learned something here, please give this video a like and subscribe so you can be notified when I release a new DIY guitar making video. And if you want to really learn more, take one of my structured online courses at ericschaferguitars.com or register for a hands-on guitar building workshop here with me in Burnville, Pennsylvania.